I wanted to come on here today to talk to Nicola Thomas, my fellow Fragrantican here, about Esxence and the fragrance trade show that just went down in Milan. I have never been to any show like this. I aim to do so, hopefully in the next year or two. But I haven't been yet. And I know that many Fragrantica readers haven't been to any kind of show like this before. So I wanted to just grill you a little bit, Nicola, on what that process was like and maybe some brands and overall ideas and trends that you took away from going to the show. So let's start there. I mean, what is this show and have you been there before? And what is that experience like?
Yeah, so this was my third time at Esxence. I've also been to Pitti Fragranze in Florence. That was pre-COVID, so probably 3 years ago now. Esxence hasn't been on for the duration of COVID, so we've missed 2-3 years, obviously because of the risks associated with that. And basically what it is it's focused on niche perfumery predominantly. There is a little bit of skincare and beauty stuff there as well, but I tend to just breeze past that because it's much smaller than the perfumery element. And there is a big event space in Milan, and we're in this new one for the first time this year. Previously, it was in a different venue. And it is just basically this massive space that has a path set out, a bit like IKEA. You know, when you go to IKEA and there's a specific route they want you to go around. Imagine that, but instead of furniture installations, there are booths of different sizes where niche perfume brands showcase their wares. And the more successful and lucrative the brand tends to be, the bigger and the more elaborate their stand will be. So, big brands like Nishane, they had a massive stand. Masque Milano had a big stand. Pierre Guillaume had a big stand. Miller et Berthaud had a big stand. And it's fantastic. The thing that I really like about it is that a lot of creators go. So brand owners and perfumers. Sometimes the two are the same. Sometimes they're not. And it's a really fantastic opportunity to smell new stuff because a lot of people use that milestone in the calendar as an opportunity to release new fragrances. But also a really good chance to meet some of the superstar perfumers that we admire, that we talk about their work, that we just really enjoy. And the overall impression that you get from it is what a nice bunch they are, and I know they're all probably on their best behavior and they're trying to impress and they're trying to win you over with their new creations, but they are such a nice bunch of people. Generally it's like a really creative, the people sort of straddle that line between being creatives but also being savvy business owners. So they're really interesting. They've got really interesting takes on stuff. They're generally a very intelligent, switched on bunch of people to talk to. And, certainly there's some people that I could spend literally hours and, what tends to happen is you have to register in order to go. We can go as a member of public, but I think there's 4 days in total of Esxence. It's either 2 or 3 days is dedicated to just trade, so distributors, press, shop owners, brand owners, people like that. And you've got to prove that you are a member of the trade in some way, shape or form. And then the last day is open to the public. So you have to register and you go and you get a lanyard with your designation on. So I've got a badge somewhere that says press on it. And basically the brand owners and the creators are just stood on their stand and you just walk up and you say, what's new, or if it's a new brand, I like to go and ask them to tell me about the brand. They have testers there, which you can generally smell. And they're more than happy to talk to you about it. And so you're having a lot of really cool conversations with people. And what's fantastic is if you meet a brand and you get to go, oh my God, I love this one of your, like Pierre Guillaume. I met Pierre Guillaume again, spoiler alert. He's just, him and his team are just the nicest bunch of people. And so he was sort of on his stand and he was like, Nicola, and he just came and gave me a big kiss and a hug, and then was like, look, I've got a new creation. Do you want to smell it? And it's this lovely interface where we get to talk to the people whose work we're inspired by. And it's really good. When he's coming to join us, it's really good and fun and inspiring and just awesome. I end up coming away from it absolutely buzzing.
Buzzing and tired, I'm sure. What was your experience like?
Yeah, it is tiring, particularly going for 4 days on the trot, and particularly because you end up, so the sense of smell and the parts of your brain that deal with smell are generally quite neglected. So if you spent 4 days, I don't know, a film convention, you may end up quite tired then, but 4 days of intense sensory input into part of your brain that doesn't normally get a lot of attention, it is tiring, and you do get nose fatigue a lot. So there's a lot of needing to take breaks, needing to pop out. Thankfully it's Milan and the weather was lovely. It was a bit too hot possibly, so you could pop out, have a bit of a rest, and then come back in. So yeah, you do need to kind of practice a lot of self-care while you're there as well.
So, okay, I have to ask, like, what kinds of things that you saw at the show, and I'm trying to think of a way to like break it down a little bit into digestible forms. And I'm thinking, let's start at the very top, right? Like, just from a top-down perspective, what kinds of fragrances were exhibited at this year's show, and what do you think that says about where the community is right now in terms of consumption, or what might be popular in the near future?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting question. Because a lot of work goes into, kind of identifying trends. I noticed a lot of citrus. There's two things I noticed, was a lot of citrus and fruit. Now, obviously, these genres, categories are often, prevalent anyway. But there seemed to be a lot of emphasis on going back to things that were lively and fun and not too serious and not too heavy or dark, not too complicated. Just a lot of cheerful citruses, not all of which were great, I have to admit. There's some that I thought were a bit pedestrian, some really fantastic stuff, some, a little bit pedestrian. So yeah, citruses and fruit were a definite big theme. And then there's a lot of brands doing pared back, slimmed down lines. So a lot of brands who have got a complicated offer, and by that I mean like rich, nuanced, multifaceted fragrances, they're now doing a separate line that is quieter, fewer ingredients perhaps, or certainly fewer ingredients that you'll smell, a little bit more youthful, a little bit easier, and at a lower price point. I think there's a lot of, nobody was talking about, economic downturns and recessions and things like that. However, there's a definite nod to making fragrance a little bit cheaper. And several brands I noticed are bringing out lines that are specifically aimed at millennials or Gen Zers, with a view, I don't know, it felt a little bit like they were trying to capture a youthful market and were decomplicating their offer in order to get people as they came in. Now, I'm cautious about saying that youthful perfume buyer wants something uncomplicated. Maybe they do, maybe there's a lot of market research to back it up, but it feels a little bit disingenuous sometimes to me to say, if you're young, you don't want a perfume with a full complex structure. So I think brands need to be careful that they're not dumbing down, that they don't seem to be patronizing that group. But there was a definite movement towards less, I suppose, less classical stuff. Less kind of aldehydic florals, and although there's always going to be an element of that, but there seemed to be a definite movement towards this kind of Gen Z, early millennial type fragrance buyer, and producing something fun, easy to digest, a little bit simpler at a slightly lower price point than the brand might previously have done. So it was quite interesting, but those are things that I sort of noticed predominantly.
So diving deeper into your experience on the show floor, I'm curious to know what your favorite couple of experiences were, whether they were smelling something that was incredibly unique, or engaging with the people at the booth, or maybe something completely unrelated to the floor itself.
So I obviously meeting Pierre Guillaume again was marvelous, and the fact that he was so warm and welcoming was wonderful. I got to smell the exclusives line that was previously only available in the stores and is now available in, I think, 3 locations, something like that, or through three different outlets. And there were a couple in there which were just, I said to him, we use the word masterpiece a lot in perfumery and it's not always justified, but there was one called Femme en Smoking. I think it means woman in a tuxedo, something like that. That was just heart-stoppingly beautiful. It was so exciting to smell it, and it was lovely to see Pierre get excited about, that sort of positive feedback loop where he let me smell it and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And he was like, oh, you really think so? And I was like, yeah, I really do. That kind of, which was just lovely. It was so lovely. And that was fantastic. What else? I have to say, I met Manos Gerakinis from Greece for the first time. And I felt like I'd known him, we spent not very long together, but I felt like I'd known him for years. He seemed like such a lovely person, really enthusiastic, really excited about his fragrances, really warm and friendly. And I'd smelled one of his perfumes before, Anthem, but I also got to smell his whole range. Now, he had one called Immortelle, which is just gorgeous. And I've got a bit of a glass face, so if I smell something that's horrible, I have to work really hard not to go, ugh. Thankfully, there wasn't, I didn't need to deploy that very often, but Immortelle was like the opposite. I just was like, oh my God, this is so nice. It's a kind of gourmandy Immortelle flower type scent, and I don't recall smelling anything like it. So that was really cool. And then he showed me his latest fragrance, which isn't released yet, which is a fig. And I love fig, and fig is quite ubiquitous, and there's such a lot of good fig perfumes out there, that when he said fig, I thought, maybe there's not going to be room for this on the market. But then I smelt it, and it has that same really full-bodied gourmand aspect to it, with a slightly lactonic element, and it's beautiful. It's really, really nice. So that was superb. And then actually there was another moment as well where I got to spend some time with Angela Champagne and Enrico, her partner, and we were talking about their new fragrances and the inspiration behind that. And I find Angela's work really moving. It's really gothic, and if her fragrances were other worlds, they are the sort of world that you would want to be, you'd want to inhabit. They're sort of a little bit fairy tale-y. You feel like there might be knights and dragons and things like that living in there. And what I love about talking to Angela is that, you know, her English is good. My Italian is terrible. But we have this, I don't know, we have this connection that we've made through perfume. And it's always lovely to be able to spend time in that, you know, in that, you know, friendship. And she, again, it's that sort of, it's that feedback loop where she gives me something to smell, and I say, you know, I really like this about it, or you know, I like that about it. And it's really interesting when somebody is enjoying your creative energy as you're enjoying their creative energy. And I don't think there are many art forms where you get such an interesting relationship between creator and consumer. I think perfume's quite unique in that, and it's quite easy for people who love perfume to have a conversation with, you know, a brand owner or a perfumer without you know, too much difficulty. And I just think that's really cool, and I just, yeah, really enjoyed spending time with it.
So one follow-up on the Manos Caracanis visit that you had there, you were describing how the gourmand floral perfume, how you lacked any kind of thing to relate it to. I was curious if it would be at all in relation to Coffee White Flowers from Boho Boco.
Um, it's more hay like. Hey, that's a word I made up.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's
yeah, look at
more.
this perfume.
Yeah, it's more hay-like than that, I would say. Um, do they have a similar tone? I suppose they do. There's a sort of sunniness to them both, a sort of warmth and um, friendliness to them both. But yeah, I think Manos's Fragrance Immortelle, it pushes it more into the slightly, you know, I'm hesitant to say puddingy you know, or dessert category, but the Coffee White Flowers, I think, has that coffee bitterness, you know, in it, even in a kind of it's quite an interesting darkness, but it has a darkness, whereas Immortelle, I think, flips it and it is more of a dessert in a way, but it's also milkier and sunnier and a little bit more comforting, perhaps. I think there's something a little bit enlivening about Coffee White Flowers, you know, with that kind of caffeine vibe in there somewhere, whereas Manos's fragrance is a little bit a little bit more soothing, a little bit more of a perhaps a nighttime wear, and it's really, you know, it's super powerful as well. It's a real big fragrance. And it, yeah, I mean, I unfortunately the sample he gave me has leaked, and so it's all evaporated. But I've kept it, so it's like it's totally empty. I've kept it because I just keep smelling the bottle because it's so pungent, and what what I've been able to get in terms of the oil that's sort of residue around the neck, I've been rubbing on my skin actually today, and it's lingered quite nicely, even though you're talking of less than, you know, there's easily less than a spray that's been sort of caught inside the cap and around the neck. But yeah, beautiful fragrance. Really, really impressed by that one. There's a lot of really good stuff. I think people are very quick sometimes to say that creativity levels are dropping and fragrance is all about making money, which, you know, obviously there's an element of that. There has to be. But it really showed to me how wonderfully creative brands are and have been, and are continuing to be, which is really cool.
So lastly, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about individual fragrances that you smelled there that you thought were noteworthy for whatever particular reason.
Mm. So there's quite a lot. How long have we got? There's a brand called, and forgive me if I get this pronunciation wrong, Coraterno, who were totally new to me. And they started out as a candle company making pillar candles with really cool labels, and they have this special way of printing on them so that, you know, this kind of slightly inspirational quotes, but I don't mean it in a, you know, live, laugh, love kind of way. They're actually stuff like, you know, like hands like that. This is one of their stickers, and this one, which I particularly liked, with a kind of a Bowie cat. And so they started off doing those, and then branched out into scented candles and room fragrances, I believe, and also personal fragrances. And sometimes when a brand does that, you think, oh, is it going to be the same standard of fragrance that I expect from a niche brand? And there's a couple of theirs which are absolutely cracking. There's one called, I'm just going to grab them. So Hierba Nera, which has a weed note. Now, I am a little bit tired of brands just being, oh yeah, let's be edgy, let's put a weed note in, because it's not that edgy, let's face it, and it also doesn't smell that nice. However, Hierba Nera is gorgeous, and it's bergamot, nutmeg, weed, labdanum, elemi, incense, cedrambra, Texas cedar, oud, Atlas cedar, and oak musk. Now, I can't smell any oud in it, but it's a lovely aromatic herbal. I think there's a touch of something minty in there, or eucalyptus, slightly camphorous, but only ever so slightly. It's really, really nice, and I wore it. I had a training day at work that was in a very warm room, and I sprayed a load of that on before I went, and it did keep me refreshed. It was that sort of nice, aromatic, soft, gentle green fragrance. And then they've got this other one, Mystic Sugar, which is almond blossom, pineapple, orange, cocoa absolute, jasmine, tonka bean, vanilla, sandalwood, and amber. And oh my goodness, it is an absolute vanilla ethyl maltol bomb. And I can imagine a lot of people will smell it and think, oh God, that's horrible. But I really like it. I think it'll appeal to people who like things like Fanya Flames and Arnie, scents like that. It is that sort of big, like vanilla heavy, sweet. And I think you'll smell it and you'll either go, oh my God, that's gorgeous, or oh my God, that's horrific. And I really like it. It's cheeky, it's fun, it's a little bit irreverent. It's cool. I think it's lovely. So yeah, that was a brand that really super impressed me.
And what was their name again? Sorry.
Coraterno. Coraterno, yeah. So that's, if you can see that, don't know if it's backwards or not. Yeah, so they were cool. Another brand, so there's definitely, I noticed another trend of brands, or sort of lines really, being based around a hero note. So I met Maison Tahiti, which is all based around vanilla. You know, spoiler alert, I love vanilla, so that was really good. And Olibanum, which is obviously based all around Olibanum. And they even went as far as to have a stand where on the stand they had this big bowl of the little bits of resin, and the girl said, you can actually chew it, you can eat it if you want. And I didn't, but my friend who I was with at the time did. And she was like, yeah, don't do that, it's not very nice. And she said she was chewing it for ages and she couldn't get rid of it. So that was, they were both really cool. And I think there's more brands out there that are doing these kind of hero notes and then building stuff around them. And that was really cool. Again, they've got a really cool vanilla fragrance. They've got a really nice Apopanax as well. So I was quite impressed by them. Maison Tahiti, the vanilla based brand, because I like a good vanilla, so there was a lot to like in that one. And quite a neat little presentation as well, with no cap, just a little safety clip on there. And then there's also, I mean, it's not a brand, I did know some of their fragrances before, but I'd never seen them all laid out, which was Laboratorio Olfativo. And I was really surprised at the quality and the range and the depth of their fragrances. Really cool. And there were a couple in there, nice incenses, nice vanillas again, that I just thought, yeah, these are fabulous. So yeah, there was a lot there to enjoy, and it was quite nice. You know, they must have about 20 fragrances, something like that. So I could kind of start at one end and think, right, I'm here for a little while, and just smell all my way through, and think, oh yeah, there's a lot in this section that I like. So that was quite fun. And they had what's neat as well is all the different brands have different shticks that they bring. So Laboratorio Olfativos was, they didn't spray it on you, they didn't spray it on blotters, but what they did was they sprayed it on a fan and then just like wafted it. Now, when you're in 37-degree Milanese heat, having somebody like gently waft you with a scented fan was really quite lovely. So I was like, yeah, please waft me. So that was nice. And I'm just trying to think of other ones. So there was a brand called, which I was quite impressed by actually, Anfasik Dokun, who do like these cool little oud fragrances. And this one's called Arcache. I was really impressed by them. So they had, what they called was AI. Now, to not get into semantics, I'm not sure it was AI. I'm not sure if it was just like an algorithm that you put some stuff in and it spat out which fragrance you should try. But the people who were running that stall were super lovely, and it was quite fun, and it was a bit different to anything that anybody else was doing. And the fragrance, the Arcache was one of the ones that suggested to me, and it is something I perhaps wouldn't have been confident enough to try before, because you do get people who are super oud aficionados, and I'm not. But this one, it's a really lovely, sweet, ambery, resiny kind of oud, and it just in the Italian heat, it worked really well, and it was one that I liked and I wanted to put on. There's something really addictive about it and really Moorish about it, which I really enjoyed. So their kind of shtick was this AI thing. And then there was a brand called Maison Esxence, which was kind of they got some really cool fragrances. But their thing was that you went over and he got you to pick, there were some tarot cards, so you could just smell through the whole range if you wanted to, but he also handed, kind of fanned out some cards and said pick, he said pick three, and so he picked three and then he turned them over to look at the imagery on them, and he said, right, pick which images you find most appealing. So I picked two, and interestingly, one was a Santal based fragrance which I really liked, and one was one called Chypre Islay, which I might have been put off by the name, perhaps, but oh my goodness, it's so nice. It's such a good fragrance, like a white floral in a Chypre structure, but I don't know, there's something just really different, really wearable, super elegant about it. So yeah, and it does really range from brands that will go, there was another brand that had these little square boxes about, well, sort of rectangular boxes about this big, and they didn't have any I can't remember what they were called, but they didn't have any blotters, but what you did was you turned the thing on and it blew air at you with the fragrance in it, which I didn't like so much because some of them didn't really work, and some of them worked better than others, and there was no, you couldn't kind of vary the strength of what you were getting out. So I didn't think that worked so well. But clearly a lot of thought goes into, okay, how do we make this how do we make this a little bit different? How do we stand out from everybody else? And some people give out little fabric roses or little fake roses that they've sprayed in the scent, which is quite nice, and they're quite a nice little keepsake to come home with and put in a little vase. Or I tend to put them in my wardrobe, so they scent my wardrobe. Or sometimes people, they give out these little fabric rings, so it's a little elastic band with a little fabric flower that they spray with the perfume, and it's quite a nice way. You can sort of walk along sniffing your finger. So yeah, it's interesting to see how inventive people are with how they go about getting their message across, and getting the scent to stand out in your mind. Because there was over 280 brands there. So if you imagine, even if each brand only brought 5 perfumes, and actually most of them brought many more than that, that's a lot of perfume. So the fatigue does kind of set in, and so brands do have to make themselves memorable, and they do that in a variety of very clever, very interesting ways.
Well, it's been awesome hearing about this experience and hearing about some of the newer and already established brands that were able to present themselves in those fun ways. I do hope that Esxence considers having a North American event offshoot at some point in the near future, because while I would love an excuse to go to Italy, it would also be really cool to put some brands on the spotlight that might have a harder time getting over there to be at that show specifically. So let's hope something like that pops up.
Yeah, but how cool would it be if Esxence next year, if like you could come, like how much fun would we have just walking around sniffing stuff? Like we would be like pigs in the proverbial. Because
And
it was
also,
fun in New York, but like to have it concentrated like that, it would be a lot of fun.
I'm sure we'd probably end up doing just as much walking as we did on our New York trip, but that's I guess to be
Yeah,
expected when you go to a large trade show like that.
yeah, yeah. And you tend to sort of circle round and do certain ones, like a bit like IKEA again. Then you go again and you spot different stuff, and then you think, oh, I'll go again. I'll just go for another walk. But yeah, there's some, then of course the other thing is that some people go and for whatever reason they don't have a stand. So I think demand was very high this year. And I know some brands were saying to me that they'd wanted a stand and they couldn't have one because they'd just run out of space. So that's really interesting, because then people end up going and making appointments and just meeting you separately, but they don't have a stand. And as a result, I did manage to smell some really cool things that way. So I smelled Guilt, which is Sarah Baker's new fragrance, which is a lovely, it sort of follows on from Ludo in that it's another sweet oud gourmand type fragrance, but it's Ludo a little bit on steroids. It's very over, like, if I say over the top, it sounds like a criticism. It's not. It's just really big, and I don't know, it's like sort of dripping in gold. It's a really good name for it, is Guilt, because it does feel like it is dripping in gold. And then I also smell Rock Lobster by Ricardo Ramos, which is, you're laughing because you know the reference, don't you? It is a reference to the B-52s.
Of all the things that I've heard referenced in fragrance titles, that is a first.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's got accords of hairspray, and he said he wanted to make it like a sort of early 90s party. So there's hairspray and soda, as in like a soda pop, and really happy things like that. But then there's a slightly marine salty lobster accord, which is really cool. And apparently he's going to present this to the B-52s while they're on tour, which is super awesome. And it is a really fun.
My next question for you was, in fact, when you open the cap, does a disembodied voice scream at you like, "Now spray it on your clothes"? Like,
I wish it did. Like, no, but it's
oh,
really
wow, Shaq, baby.
cool. Yeah, it's such a fun fragrance, and it even has an Elnet accord in there, a hairspray accord, which is just, it's wicked that he's done that. So yeah, it's a really, really good fun, and I really appreciated the chance to, you know, chat to these people and yeah, just sort of see their creativity in action, which was awesome. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I'm asking myself questions now. One of the things that they do at Esxence, which we haven't touched on, is they run workshops. And so the last time I went 3 years ago, the workshop I went to was a very talented perfumer called Joël Leroux Patry, who we've got a cat conglomeration behind you now.
Oh god.
Um, don't fight, guys.
Oh, they're behaving.
So she was talking through the formulation and composition of one of her fragrances, which was really super interesting. This time, what we did was we met with a guy called Douglas Morell, who is a perfumer for Kiva, I believe, one of the big fragrance, sort of behind the scenes manufacturers. And he's a perfumer, and what he did was we smelled our way through some bases that he and his team had put together, or his colleagues had put together, and picked one that we liked, and then we picked different elements to add to it. Now they were all sort of it was like selecting pre-mixed kind of accords, but we and then he took the 6 things, I think we picked 6 in the end, the 6 things that we'd picked, he tweaked it to try and make a formula out of it that was wearable. So I can't remember quite everything we've picked, but we picked a base accord that had sandalwood in it, and then there was a definite big smoky incense and yuzu. And I did think, how is this going to work? Because it doesn't feel like it feels like it might be slightly demented as a fragrance. And so he went away and sort of was like, right, okay, so we'll have 80% of that and then 20% of that, and got it mixed up and gave us a little, I don't know, probably 15 ml bottle of it to take away. And it's really good. It's really fun. And I did end up wearing it on the way back quite a bit, actually, because it's just really, I mean, it is slightly demented as a fragrance, but in a way that's quite wearable, and the incense accord's beautiful in it. So I really enjoyed it, and that was really fun. And having that one-to-one time with a perfumer where you can ask all those questions that you want to get the expert answer to, that was really cool. And he was a really nice bloke as well, and just that excitement at sharing his knowledge was super cool and really interesting.
Maybe it
So
warrants its
basically,
own separate
the upshot
event.
is,
I think
yeah,
something like that would be so cool to put on, where you have one or more perfumers, and you're selecting, you're kind of playing chance with them, or they're playing chance with you, where they provide you a palette of things that you would want to smell, and they kind of do something with your input, and then you take
yeah,
something away from that to smell later. And that's just utterly fascinating approach to engaging with buyers, or engaging with people who are interested in this. And I
yeah,
would really love to see that be its own little stand at a show like
yeah,
that.
yeah. It was really good fun, and yeah, it's just really exciting and energizing to be able to be in that environment and to be able to have those opportunities. It's really, I feel really lucky to be able to go to something like that and to enjoy it, because I did really enjoy it. Not to mention the metric huge amount of ice cream that I ate while I was there.
So in summary, if you have the opportunity to go to a show, whether it's this one or another fragrance show do it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that, to my mind, Esxence is it's the friendliest one I've been to, the best one, the one that is most consumer friendly. That one of the things that they don't do is you can't go and buy. So if you love a fragrance, if you fall in love with a fragrance, you can't say, "Can I have a bottle of that, please?" Which is a bit of a shame, really. I know some stands, not all of them, do sell off their bottles at the end, their kind of tester bottles at the end, which is very nice of them to do, but it's because they don't want the hassle and cost of shipping them back. But yeah, I think that is a thing that's missing, is the element where you could go and you could fall in love with something, and then you have to come home and work out how to get hold of it. Because somebody said to me, as your to buy list massively increased, and I was like, absolutely, but I know that some of them don't ship to the UK, or I'm going to have to go to the continent to get, or I could get them shipped, but that makes them prohibitively expensive. So that is a side of it which would be cool to, I don't know, overcome at some point.
So if anything, I mean, if you had to take away one singular lesson that you learned from going to this year's show, what would that be?
Well, that's a really tough question. I think it would be that perfumers and brands are working really hard in the main, and they're really passionate about what they do, and they see there being value in us writing about and talking about fragrance and communicating about fragrance, because it helps inspire then almost like the next generation of fragrance that they're working on. So sometimes when, as I'm sure you'll feel when you're sat at home, when you're working on your latest review, it can feel very much like you're in your own head and you're working in isolation. And then when you publish it, you'll get a reception from the community, and you do start to feel part of something bigger. But the thing that always is underlined for me when I meet the creators is that really tenuous, very, beautiful silvery thread that connects us all, and that connects. And I'm still not bored of experiencing it. How, Pierre Guillaume, Angela Champagne, Manos Garakinis, another perfumer, or another perfumer, they have an idea and they put that idea into fragrance. They might be thousands of miles away. They might be totally different to me. There might be a different gender, a different age, a different socioeconomic group, a different race, or a different religion. All of that, they could be totally different to me. But thousands of miles away, I can pick up their bottle, and if they're good at what they do, I can smell it and I can understand something about them. And that's really powerful. And I'm not bored of that yet. I'm not bored of experiencing it. It is exciting and interesting, and I actually think it's alive and well. Having smelled some of the creations that I've smelled, whilst I was in Italy, I definitely think that's alive and well, and I think that's the magic of it for me. It's the magical element. It's what makes it more interesting than blind consumerism, or what makes it more interesting than just looking at something or experiencing something in a passive way. There's an activeness to it, and a connection which I just love. And I just think it's really cool. So yeah, if you do get a chance, definitely go just to that or to something like it, because you just never know what you're going to discover.